been to a sporting event. The atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, well, what sports books could go there? I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
Hello and welcome to a Wednesday live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern Time. A Wednesday to look back on a huge Tuesday night in the world of basketball. 9-game slate around the association. History made in Los Angeles for the man known as the 40-year-old King. And some winning streaks continuing around the NBA as well. A monumental Tuesday night in college hoops at the high major level, final week of the regular season. A ton of top 25 teams in action last night. And the number one team in the nation does go down in College Station. In many games that impacted the NCAA tournament bubble and conference tournaments beginning even in more spots around mid-major leagues. What a time in college hoops. Big NFL news. It was tag deadline day around the National Football League. Deals were done. So much to get to here, DRS, over these next 3 hours.
And probably only the Philadelphia Eagles could make a running back in Saquon Barkley the highest paid running back in the sport, and probably lowered his cap hit here nonetheless. Make it make sense. It doesn't, because a lot of people are going to make a lot of money in the free agent process this year in the NFL. So watch that play out. But Ben is right. College basketball really ramping up. Conference tournaments here underway, as we've already said. Another 3 more set to start today, which we're going to give you a preview for, having fun with those. And also a couple team totals yesterday. Went to bed. Iowa State not going to get to that 79.5. Woke up 2 OTs. That is always your best friend with totals.
Yes, it certainly is. After 2 points in only the opening 6 minutes between the Cyclones and the Cougars, we needed that extra session and then another extra session to push us to an over last night in Ames. Your college basketball recap coming in just a moment. But some history last night for the streaking Lakers in L.A. 21-point win over the New Orleans Pelicans, 136-115. The Pels playing better, but the Lakers have now won 7 straight games. The Lakers cover as a 9-point home favorite last night. The history came very early on. With his first point in the game, LeBron James reaches the 50,000 point mark in regular season and playoff games combined, becoming the first and only NBA player to ever get to that threshold. He finishes with 34. Luka Doncic pours in 30 as well, and the Lakers have won 7 straight.
It's pretty impressive because this team is gelling quickly here, and we didn't even get the best of Luka Doncic right after the trade, but now we're starting to settle in. 9 of 19 from the floor, 6 of 13 from three-point range, 30 total points, and how about a team best? Plus 37 on the court for Luka, and LeBron James in his last game wasn't all that efficient, was very much efficient in this past game. 10 of 18 from the floor, included 5 of 10 from three-point range, and 9 of 9 from the free throw line. An easy blowout victory for the Los Angeles Lakers by 20-plus points at home as they continue to roll.
We'll talk about the Lakers' outlook. Are they a true contender out west? That will be the debate. A plus-minus of a plus 37 for Luka Doncic, maybe adding some insult to injury on a very difficult day in Dallas for the Mavs. You see Luka Doncic starting to look like Luka Doncic, but now in the purple and gold. A season-saving win, perhaps, for the Phoenix Suns last night at home in the Valley, down by as many as 23 points late in the third quarter. Phoenix rallies in the fourth to pull off a huge home upset of the LA Clippers, 119-117. The Suns win outright as that 3-point home dog.
Yeah, Clips are in a bad way right now. That's an easy victory against a dead basketball team that you let them come back in the fourth quarter and beat you by 2 points at the buzzer. That can't absolutely happen to the Clippers. I still think the Clippers make the playoffs, but interesting enough for the Phoenix Suns, they rally last night for that victory and then see Kyrie Irving go down, which we'll get to it, and also talking about Anthony Davis maybe sitting out the rest of the season. The biggest benefactor from that injury might be the Phoenix Suns and their pathway to getting to the play-in round and a 500-1 price to win the NBA championship.
Still 4 games under 500 for Phoenix, but only 3 games now back of that 10th and final postseason spot, the 4th and final play-in tourney position in the Western Conference. 34 points for Kevin Durant and Colin Gillespie. Yeah, the guy from Villanova providing a huge spark in that fourth quarter as a part of the comeback. Down goes number 1. Last night in College Station, the number 1 team in the country, the Auburn Tigers, who have been atop the AP Top 25 for 7 straight weeks, has a 6-game win streak snapped by an A&M team now ranked 22nd in the poll, who had lost 4 straight games. The chaos in the month of March. A&M wins 83-72 outright as a 4.5-point home dog in College Station.
Yeah, well, by the way, on paper, Texas A&M had a pretty good look in that one, just not playing great basketball down the stretch. Big-time victory for them. Did you know their team total, Ben, was 72.5 yesterday? Easily eclipsed that, scoring 83 points against the best team in the country, in the best conference in the country. Nice win for A&M.
Worked its way up, DRS, 74.5. I know because I used a 30% profit boost token on our lovely FanDuel Sportsbook, thinking if A&M was going to win this game or keep it within that margin, as we saw, just a 4.5-point number, they would need to score. Auburn over in 9 of its last 11. A&M over in 4 consecutive games, snapping a 4-game losing skid. Chaos inside Hilton Coliseum, where Iowa State entered last night with only 1 home defeat in the last 2 seasons. Now make it 2. BYU, a couple of huge road wins as of late in double OT, 88-85 in Ames, knocking off the Cyclones. BYU, DRS, has won 7 consecutive games, covering in all 7, 3 of them outright as a road underdog. In Morgantown against the Mountaineers, in Tucson, in a controversial close against Arizona, last night in Ames against Iowa State.
You know what doesn't make sense in this game? I don't know if I ever saw this before. A quality opponent like BYU going on the road against Iowa State. They turned the basketball over. Talking about BYU, 29 times in that game to 11 for Iowa State and still beat them. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then you look at the rebounding disparity. 52 boards for BYU, 24 boards for Iowa State. In a crazy box score, big-time win for BYU. And yes, over 79.5 still cashes the same, no matter if it's in regulation, 1 overtime or 2 overtimes. You needed it all, and they got there. So that was the big part I took away from last night from Iowa State.
And in fairness, DRS, we only needed the opening extra session to go over that game total of 149.5. Yesterday was tag deadline day around the National Football League. 4 p.m. Eastern time to place the franchise tag on a player on your roster. Of course, the Eagles did not need to do that with Saquon Barkley, but just 1 year into his Philly tenure, a contract extension, a 2-year deal worth more than $41 million, making Saquon Barkley the highest paid running back ever in NFL history. The only guy to get more than $20 million per year. And after the record-setting season last year, leading the Eagles to a Super Bowl, really, who could fault the Birds?
Taking care of one of their best players is what the Philadelphia Eagles do. You can't sign anybody. High-paid quarterback, highest-paid running back, 2 high-paying wide receivers, high-paid offensive line. That's how you get it done here. As long as your owner wants to win, people, he can spend whatever money he wants in the NFL, and the Eagles do it right.
And we'll talk about the financial forward nature of what Philadelphia excels in doing in our next segment. The New York Jets have officially released Davante Adams. His 11-game stint in green comes to a close.
Fantastic news for the Jets. They are cleaning house right now. Watch out for this. Man, when's the last time we said that? Watch out for the Jets in a couple years? Yeah, how about it?
I want to talk about Davante Adams, though. We'll do that up next. And no need for the franchise tag for Osa Odighizuwa in Dallas. 4-year, $80 million extension agreed to yesterday.
Yeah, everybody just pulling the ski mask down on Jerry Jones and laughing all the way to the bank as they will not win a championship or even make an NFC championship game. But everybody gets paid. They love Dallas, no question.
So this move, actually one of the better the Dallas Cowboys could make. We'll talk about it in a little bit. NFL news up next.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
NHL today, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Philadelphia 76ers, they tried to play two different things. They tried to play contender, and they tried to play protect Joel Embiid. It wasn't doing Joel Embiid any good. This goes back to what I've talked about numerous times on this network. Why did they let him play in the first place? Why was he on the Olympic team? I mean, we looked at it last year in the playoffs against the Knicks. The damn kid was on one leg.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Tag deadline day around the National Football League on a Tuesday afternoon, now officially 1 week away from the start of a new league year in the NFL. That is 1 week from today, next Wednesday, March 12th at 4 p.m. Eastern. So, DRS, as we get some news over the next week, everything becomes official exactly a week from today. At any time there is a deadline around the NFL, not only will it focus on that specific thing, like franchise or transition tags, but of course we'll get some big news around the NFL, including an early contract extension for the record-setting running back in Philadelphia after his first year in the city of brotherly love. That being Saquon Barkley, just 1 year into his 3-year, $38 million deal that, of course, Barkley signed with the Eagles last offseason, a new record-setting extension. 2-year deal, $41.2 million extension. The highest paid running back now ever in the National Football League. The only ever running back, DRS, to make $20 million or more in annual average value.
Yeah, and we talk about it. Look, the salary cap's going up. The good players are going to get rewarded, and also a forward-thinking organization by saying we probably have Saquon Barkley for at least 2 to 3 more years in his full prime, barring a disastrous injury. Why don't we get him a little bit more money up front? We'll appreciate that as a franchise. You have also all of that money saved away, as we talk about, and we will continue to talk about how much money you can get on the average bonus, which means guaranteed money in your back pocket. So I think everybody in the organization was happy, and is anybody going to fault it? He just came off the single best season in the history of football from the running back position. You pushed a little bit more money his way. Everybody wins here. Organizations should look at the Philadelphia Eagles and say, yes, that's the gold standard. Imagine a person who signs a deal, and a very good deal, plays more and better than what everybody thought he was going to do, and has a sensational season, they gave him more money. Free agents will see that. You know what else free agents see? The way players get treated in Cincinnati goes a long way.
And you could make an argument that Saquon Barkley is getting a big thank you from every single running back around the NFL, reinvigorating the position as he did with a big deal last offseason, and his performance proving that if you have a record-setting running back on pace for it, you can make some headway in the National Football League. And the also interesting thing about this deal, Saquon can also earn an additional $15 million worth of contract incentives already on the highest paid running back contract in NFL history. And here's what's fascinating, Donnie, as we try our best to illuminate what front offices are doing around the NFL with our limited knowledge, but just being around the National Football League here on this show. It is not often that you see a contract extension handed out in only 1 year into a 3-year deal is a contract extended even on top of that, certainly for more money. But one of the reasons the Eagles are able to pay everybody, all of their key contributors, as we highlighted yesterday, they draft so well, so they have instant impact players on the defensive side of the football, but because they have that financial foresight to get these deals done right now, which seems like a lot of money, and it certainly is. But in the escalating and increasing salary cap, you have Jeffrey Lurie as an owner who is willing to spend, and you have Howie Roseman as the GM who is creatively coming up with these contracts. So you have financial flexibility based on your salary cap, based on your cap hits for your most important players, which is why this deal is fascinating, but also allows the Eagles to make record-setting deals just like this.
It does, and that's being, again, proactiveness is what makes a great organization in the NFL. Does every move work out? No. Like you saw last year, like they signed Bryce Huff to close to $18 million a year, and he was an absolute disaster that was inactive on Super Bowl Sunday despite being absolutely healthy for the season. But when you do identify players that you feel right now, if you pay them, wow, can't believe they reset the market on running back, watch this deal in 2 years, and they go, man, Saquon, another 1,600-yard rushing season and a deep playoff run. Boy, they really got a steal out of that. It's being proactive and not reactive is what makes the Philadelphia Eagles great. And I will always stand on this. Yes, there is a salary cap in the NFL, but you can bend those rules all the way down as long as your owner is willing to spend that front guaranteed bonus money right off the bat and spread those years out. You can sort of kick that can down the road a little bit more and say, how does one team have so much more talent than other teams? Because they're proactive and they're smart on players that they identify to be future superstars on their team for at least the next 2 to 3 years. Pay them immediately. You will save so much money on the back end. It's what the Philadelphia Eagles are doing.
2 to 3 off seasons ago, we would have laughed at the idea of a running back even flirting with $20 million per year. But Saquon Barkley, after rushing for 2,504 yards, including the postseason, that's the most ever in NFL history, regular plus postseason. Really, who can blame Philadelphia with the financial foresight? It was not surprising, DRS, that yesterday it became official. the New York Jets releasing Davante Adams. He spent only 11 games in New York. It frees up nearly $30 million of cap space as Adams had no guaranteed money on his deal following this season. So a good move for New York, that clean slate, that fresh start led by Aaron Glenn. And now Davante Adams, more than likely, as T. Higgins was placed under the franchise tag, becomes that top target in the free agent wide receiver market.
And I love it, just from a Jets perspective here. Yes, Garrett Wilson finally back in that driver's seat as the number one wide receiver, a great young talent. This is his locker room, and it always should have been. Got circumvented the past 2 years with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. But understand this. When you hire a head football coach and a general manager, tough decisions have to be made because most will be in self-preservation mode a couple years into their career. This is what's refreshing. New GM, new head coach, understanding the task. It didn't work last year. If I bring the guys back and maybe I coach them up a little bit, maybe we get 6 to 7 wins, 8 wins, and maybe a chance at a playoff berth. That's not the objective in the NFL. It's to win a championship. Build that foundation. Teach the principles that you want installed in that franchise and move forward. You see what Detroit did? Laughing stock of the NFL. Got a head coach that understood what he wanted out of his team and saw it the way through. Did they win a championship yet? No. But Detroit is so much better under Dan Campbell. I love what Aaron Glenn and that team is doing right now because in a couple of years, Jets fans, you're going to be proud of your franchise. Something you couldn't say for what, 20 years at this point?
When you have missed the playoffs for 14 consecutive seasons, by far the longest active drought, in half of those 14 years, 5 wins or fewer, you have not been able to say proud in the New York Jets for a very long time. But Aaron Glenn, the new head coach, and Darren Muji, the new GM, trying their best to do just that. We'll talk Davante Adams a little bit later on, but more NFL news from Tag Deadline Day next.
Looking for an edge in betting basketball? Injuries can make or break a game. Get insider knowledge from Dr. David Chow and the team of experts with Sick Picks at Sports Injury Central. We reveal hidden health-based advantages the sports books miss. Our doctors provide insights, and our algorithm tells you who to bet on. Spreads, props, totals, in-game bets, Sick Picks covers it all. Go to SickScore.com and sign up for Sick Picks and use the promo code SportsGrid for a free week today.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York team has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern.
Tag Deadline Day around the National Football League was yesterday. 1 week exactly from now, and probably about 8 hours or so, the league year begins for 2025. So, DRS, a lot of NFL news and notes to bring you here. That negotiating window, by the way, for free agents, the non-tampering period, in heavy air quotes, that begins on Monday, the Cowboys over the weekend shared an intention that they would franchise tag defensive tackle Osa Odighizuwa if a long-term deal was not reached. Well, that long-term contract extension was reached yesterday. Osa Odighizuwa and the Dallas Cowboys agreeing to a 4-year, $80 million deal that includes $52 million guaranteed. Osa Odighizuwa, who's played all 4 years of his NFL career for Dallas, a career best 4.5 sacks as a disruptive force for an otherwise pretty poor Dallas defense a season ago. Now, Donnie, is he worth $20 million per year? I guess you could debate that. In my estimation, though, finally, Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones make a good deal because they don't place the franchise tag on Odighizuwa. They don't let this drag out. Yes, they waited until deadline day, but they get a franchise-friendly deal and get one of their young, promising defensive players paid up front.
Yes, the salary cap's going up. Marginal football players are going to get paid. Now, Odighizuwa is a very good football player. 26 in his prime makes sense. Lock him up long term, you get that. But here's why we always get angry, and it always gets back for me, Ben, to the Cincinnati Bengals. You saw the Dallas Cowboys go, hey, we're going to have to franchise tag you in case we can't work things out. No, they might be close. They had lines of communication that were open. Here's the difference. 1 year at $26 million, which goes right to the cap hit that season on a franchise tag. He just signed 4 years, $80 million, and will count $6 million against the salary cap this upcoming season. So that gives you roughly $20 million more to play with, and you got your football player. He's paid, he's happy with a lot of money, and the salary cap, you didn't abuse it by eating up $20 million, which other teams will use the cap space and say, okay, T. Higgins, $25 million, when you can get T. Higgins at $5 or $6 million and use that money to spread it around and build your defense. So I know I always make it about the Bengals, but this is what we talk about when, if you're using the franchise tag, you are doing it wrong in the NFL. Hey, Jerry, finally, a good decision.
Absolutely so. You get Osa Odighizuwa on a better deal for your franchise, and the player and his representation happier as well because $52 million guaranteed up front. None of the franchise tag tender value is fully guaranteed. It's good for both sides, which is why, Donnie, I will bring this up. Only 2 players officially in this franchise tag window for 2025 were placed under the tag. T. Higgins for a second consecutive year in Cincy, and Trey Smith in Kansas City, their right guard. That was the fewest number of players placed under a franchise tag in a league year since 1994, now over 3 decades ago. Why do I highlight that? Because the franchise tag, in essence, was always out there to benefit the organization, to benefit the NFL club. A player was never going to be thrilled placed under the franchise tag. No long-term security, no guaranteed money up front, even if that annual average value wasn't all that bad in terms of the price tag. It was always meant to benefit the franchise. But with the increasing salary cap year over year, and dramatically so, there's really not a benefit for the franchise anymore because a franchise tag does not allow them the financial flexibility to play a multitude of players. The franchise tag is not nearly as robust or as seen as somebody playing under the tag for that season as it used to be even 5-10 years ago. 9 guys were placed under the tag last offseason. Only one, T. Higgins, ended up having to play under the franchise tag because the other 8 agreed to a long-term deal with their franchise.
You're right. It's used as a marker right now where the organization and the player understand, hey, we're making headway here. We just might need a couple more weeks here. Let me place the franchise tag so you just can't go into free agency. We'll work things out. That's the way it should be used. As a final note where players are playing under the franchise tag, it's disastrous. And once again, Cincinnati, what is it last year if you didn't use the franchise tag and you saved T. Higgins and said, you know what, here's your big contract, and you counted $20 million less against the cap. Maybe you could have paid an extra linebacker, safety, or cornerback and actually made the playoffs. If you use the franchise tag and a player plays under it, again, you are doing this completely backwards here. Good for the Dallas Cowboys, got their player at a manageable number, and they move forward to try to improve that team.
The franchise does not benefit from a financial aspect under a franchise tag tender, and the player is certainly not happy with that deal either. Plenty of NFL news a week away from the league year beginning. Up next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event,
Well said.
the atmosphere
Well said.
before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not beating the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on
Only 2 players placed under the franchise tag ahead of the tag deadline yesterday at 4 p.m. Eastern. In Cincinnati for a second straight offseason, T. Higgins with the hope of reaching a long-term deal. Hold your breath if you are trusting the Bengals front office. Trey Smith, the right guard for Kansas City. We expect a long-term extension at some point. And for those 2 guys under the tag, they have until July 15th to agree to a long-term deal with their franchise or play under the tag for 2025 or sit out. The New York Jets have given Alan Lazard permission to seek a trade. That's like the buddy you don't talk to from high school anymore, being like, I give you permission to make new friends. There's no reason to give Alan Lazard permission to seek a trade except for the fact he is under contract. Donnie, again, it goes to the idea of the New York Jets and this new brass cleaning house of anybody that had any fingerprint of the Aaron Rodgers disastrous 2-year tenure.
Exactly. And it's the way you're supposed to do business. New coach in there, fresh slate here, build your program the way you want it. No back talk, no backstabbing here. Nobody going up the food chain to talk to the owner or the owner's son directly here to try to get their way. It's refreshing to see because you just want to get started on even foot where you say, you know what? Let me get these guys in OTAs and training camp here with no preconceived notions on how it was back in the day, meaning the last 2 years. It's interesting to see because they have a lot of high-priced veterans on that defense for a defense that should have been very good, who sort of collapsed midway through the season or when Robert Saleh got fired from that football team. So if we're looking forward, I'm high on the Jets. It's not going to pay dividends, I don't think, this season, but I understand this. When I see a head coach come in and say, we're probably going to be bad next year, and that's not the important thing. The building blocks for the future are what's important. I think the Jets absolutely nailed their head coach. Now, in 2 to 3 years, could the Jets possibly be a playoff team and make a run at the Super Bowl? Sure. Could they possibly be still a bad football team? Absolutely. A lot of things have to go right in your order. Great drafting process here, great young quarterback, and away you move forward. But from a Jets perspective, for me, every time I see a veteran under the previous 2-year regime in New York up for sale or cut, I love what I see more and more.
In this new management team, head coach Aaron Glenn, GM Darren Muji is going to be afforded the time, you would think, Donnie, to get it right with some of those draft picks, including most importantly at the quarterback spot, more than likely not happening here in 2025. The Chicago Bears, who selected first overall and drafted Caleb Williams, of course, priority number 1 this offseason, reinforcing that O-line. And I think they made a solid trade yesterday, acquiring Jonah Jackson, interior offensive lineman from the LA Rams. He spent 4 years, the first 4 of his career in Detroit, working under who? Ben Johnson only played 4 games in an injury-marred season last year with the Rams, but in his 4 years with the Lions, very consistent up front, DRS. And the Bears need to protect Caleb Williams, who was sacked 68 times a season ago. The most by far, more than 15 sacks by far of any quarterback in the NFL last year.
If you don't have an offensive line that can protect your quarterback, you're not going to win very many football games. And particularly when you have a young quarterback that's just trying to learn how the NFL works, meaning getting through your progressions, the last thing you want him to do is say, okay, progression 1 isn't open. Oh, no, avalanche of defenders trying to kill me. Now I can't go through 2, 3, and 4 at this point. Invest in your offensive line, which means you're investing in your quarterback. I like to see that here for the Bears.
Only gave up a 6th-round pick as well. Jonah Jackson got a big offseason extension, or a new deal, I should say, with the Rams last year. The Bears will pay it. They've got the cap space to do so. And Bill Belichick in North Carolina will not appear on HBO's Hard Knocks, the offseason edition. Apparently, DRS, by reports, some creative differences between Belichick and NFL Films of who would hold control of that final cut.
Yeah, which basically meant I don't want you filming my practice, but Bill, this is exactly what we do here. And by the way, Bill, you used to film everybody else's practice. What's the big deal now if we film your practice and try to get a hold of it? And then, also the other lightning rods. Hey, we're going to be around the facility. We're also going to get into your personal life here. You're not going to put my girlfriend on camera and ask her questions. All right, deal's off at this point. I don't know why we asked. And also, Bill Belichick, social media-wise, very funny. You see him, out and about talking to players when he's not a head coach. But when he's a head coach, he might be the most boring person in the history of the planet. Why did everybody think this was actually going to work out? Like, man, can't wait to see Bill in action. We saw him for 25 years in the NFL. Boring and boorish as hell.
And we saw him for about 30 minutes in his introductory press conference where he was the same exact guy we had seen for 2.5 decades in Foxborough. Not that funny guy roasting Tom Brady or on the Manning cast. When he's a head coach, he's all about business. So, tag deadline day comes and goes. Only 2 guys under the franchise tag, which means, Donnie, starting on Monday, the non-tampering negotiating window for free agency truly begins. We'll get all of the news of the contracts, of the deals that then will be made official exactly 1 week from today when the league year starts. I do want to highlight Davante Adams, who was released yesterday or planned to be released by the New York Jets. Donnie, it has not been a great last few years for Davante Adams, at least in his impact on a successful franchise. But he has still had 5 consecutive seasons of 1,000 yards. Even last year, in only 11 games with New York, 854 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. He is 32 years old. He is certainly in the tail end of his NFL career. But I think he's the top wide receiver on the market. Chris Godwin might have something to say about that. But for a couple of teams that will need some wide receiver help now with T. Higgins under the tag in Cincinnati, Davante Adams still can get it done in my estimation, even at 32.
No, he can, and he's going to be able to help a football team. Like, does he want to be a mercenary, which means pay me the most money, I'll go to a bad organization, or am I going to go to an organization that really needs a wide receiver to take them over the hump by making a deep playoff run? There's still a lot of things. I just don't want to see him pay. Like, let's just say Aaron Rodgers winds up on football team X over here. I just don't want to see him go that route. Just go with another team. You take a look at like the Kansas City Chiefs adding a veteran wide receiver with a Patrick Mahomes. You take a look at the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. Get him paired up with a really good quarterback, name not Aaron Rodgers, and I'll buy into it. But there's still gas in the tank for Davante Adams, who'll help somebody next year.
And you wonder if Davante Adams will follow that foresight, right? To play with Buffalo, to be the one guy there, or at least pairing with Khalil Shakir to help that wide receiver room, to head out to L.A., to give Justin Herbert some wide receiver help, or if he will demand to play with Aaron Rodgers, because Davante has been very particular about his quarterback in his NFL career. Started with Aaron Rodgers, forced his way out of Green Bay after or even in Rodgers' final season to pair with his college buddy in Derek Carr, who was shipped out of Las Vegas as well. That's really been the story for Davante Adams. Chris Godwin, a wide receiver on the market. Ronnie Stanley, not placed under the tag in Baltimore. He will test free agency as well. Khalil Mack, Zach Bond, after a very successful year in Philadelphia, and Javon Holland, the safety for Miami. But of course, DRS, a lot of focus on the top name on that board. That would be Sam Darnold. It is not a great quarterback class here in the 2025 offseason, either in the draft or in free agent waters. Even a couple of guys that we thought could be on the move, Kirk Cousins, you would have to trade for him and take on a lot of money. Derek Carr, at least for the time being, is remaining the starting quarterback in New Orleans. So it's really just Sam Darnold, DRS.
It is Sam Darnold, and he's going to have a pretty good amount of options out here to get paid good money. The interesting part is they couldn't franchise tag him because it's not like, hey, you know what? I'm going to franchise tag a inside linebacker or let's just say a safety at this point. Okay, it's going to be manageable. Like, can you imagine if they tag Darnold, he's 40+ million, and it's like, we just got a fax in this morning. Well, what's the fax say? He signed his franchise tag. Now you're on the hook for $40 million, and Sam Darnold laughs all the way back. Like, yeah, I'll play one more at $40 million and then go off into the offseason next year and try to cash in even more at this point. It's not surprising there, but also down the list there on that graphic, Ronnie Stanley, a good offensive lineman, left tackle, hitting free agency, is going to get money. But the interesting part is, how did he actually get there? What do the Ravens know? How much gas does he have left in the tank? Has been injured quite a bit there. That's one to keep an eye on, because teams that are so needy at left tackle, they will have a big-time overpay, and the Ravens know that. Maybe just walked away where they're just like, you know what? We just couldn't afford the guy at this point.
Namely, the Flock's biggest rival, perhaps, in the AFC, the Chiefs, who could use a left tackle like Ronnie Stanley. Interesting point, DRS. NBA recap from Tuesday. Next.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. So, but I've played it well, and I really liked it that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Remember when everyone was upset about NIL? You know what NIL did? Make sure Cooper Flagg wasn't playing with the G League Ignite. That's good for us. That's good for college basketball, when the best players are actually playing college basketball.
You're going to get battle tested. And it doesn't matter, Kevin, if you're at home or on the road. If you don't come ready to play in the SEC, you're going home with an L.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
What's going on here? What are you talking about? But is Bryce going to shave? And then is Bryce going to I hope not. They once tried to ask me that. They were like, whoa, Tatum, the mustache, I'm not sure.
Whoa.
And first go around, right? I was like, you know what? All right. And then the second go around, I was like this. Come on now, it looks good. Get used to it, get excited.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
He doesn't feel like he gets enough recognition for his achievements.
I'm on a really good team, and I'm like, I don't matter, but I'll have nights I'll have 21, 19, 18, because I don't matter. I would rather be on a team, a good team that wins, than care about myself. I mean, honestly, wouldn't you rather just play with dudes that are great and win?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Recaps around the association from a Tuesday evening, live right here on a Wednesday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. Make it 7 straight wins for the Los Angeles Lakers. They dropped their first game, even as a double-digit home favorite against the Hornets following the All-Star break. And ever since then, 7 straight victories. Last night by 21, 136-115 at home in L.A. against the New Orleans Pelicans. The Lakers cover as a 9-point home favorite. The Lakers get a combined 64 points out of LeBron, who had 34, and Luka, who had 30, and a plus-minus of plus 37. Also in the game, LeBron James scoring his 50,000th point, and then a couple more after that. The first ever to get to 50K, combining the regular and postseason. A historic night in Los Angeles and a red-hot Lake Show team in downtown L.A.
Yeah, it was pretty good performance by them because, again, just beating a bad basketball team is one thing, and the Pelicans dropped to 6-26 on the road. I actually thought the Pelicans were a decent play last night, getting close to double digits. They said, you know what? Zion's healthy. He'll be back in the lineup. He did play 26 minutes, went 17 of 23 from the floor, a plus 13 and 37 total points. Now, understand the magnitude of what Zion did last night. Everybody in the starting lineup, the rest of them, minus 29, minus 29, minus 25, minus 11. He was plus 13. But you can't play the whole basketball game at this point because you're just worried about him getting injured late in the season in a throwaway year. But focus on the Los Angeles Lakers. Things are starting to mesh here, even without a true big man now. If you're going to get Luka Doncic, 30 points, and LeBron James 34. That's the big two. Yeah. Everybody else will feed off of those guys here, shooting 53% as a team from the floor, 37% from three-point range, and close to 78% from the free throw line. That's how it's done here. I'm looking forward to the Lakers when they start to step up in class and competition because some of these games they're playing against teams they should beat, and rightfully so, they are beating. Let's see the Los Angeles Lakers in that elevated spot over the next, 10 to 15 games and really see if they can press the needle down and secure that number 2 overall seed in the Western Conference.
The Lakers had gone under in all 7 games since the break. Last night, their first over, skying over to 28.5. And Luka Doncic, DRS, after a slow start in the purple and gold, and maybe because it was his first action since Christmas Day, is really starting to pick it up. 30 points, 15 dimes, 8 boards, 6 made triples. And again, that plus minus of plus 37, that is winning basketball. The Pels did enter last night, winning 5 of their last 7, but the 2 losses in that span, no covers as an underdog, that continued last night. Let's head to Madison Square Garden, where Stephen Curry continues to play some of his best ball inside MSG. A personal career record now for Steph of 12-1 straight up inside the world's most famous arena. And the Golden State Warriors, with Steph and Jimmy Butler in the starting 5, have won 9 of 10 games together. 114-102, the victory for Golden State inside MSG on the second leg of a road back-to-back, a second consecutive double-digit road win. Golden State this time outright as a 5-point dog.
Yeah, I was wrong on this one. And also was looking at the estimated starting lineup yesterday, which included Karl Anthony Towns, doesn't play in that game. Mitchell Robinson back into the starting lineup. And he did have some pretty good performance as the starters for New York, but it wasn't enough. And as you said, that's impressive. A back-to-back victory, one of those things where I thought the New York Knicks would say, you know what, it's going to be one of our nights we should play well, all intact on offense. And it wasn't. They didn't play particularly well, only 24% from the three-point line at home for the New York Knicks. That's not going to get it done. 35% shooting from three-point range for the road team, the Golden State Warriors. And something about just playing in Madison Square Garden does fire up opposing teams. It's a big stage. No matter how good the Knicks are, you're in New York City. That's a great performance and a great win for the Golden State Warriors.
The Knicks 4-3 since the All-Star break, but only one cover in that span. Golden State had not been an underdog since prior to the All-Star break. And now you add in Jimmy Butler, who, again, when he has played in the games for the Dubs, they have won 9 of 10. They have covered in all 9 of those victories as well. And the Warriors, because of a DRS, seeing their way move up the Western Conference standings, now 34-28, a full half game in front of the Minnesota Timberwolves, a full game in front of the Kings, and a game and a half in front of the LA Clippers as Golden State currently occupies that 6th spot around the Western Conference standings. Speaking of the Clippers, a disappointing road loss last night after leading by more than 20 in the closing minutes of the third quarter. And perhaps a season-saving win for the Suns. Still a lot of ground to be made up. But these are the games you have to have, and these are the moments from a momentum perspective that might be able to turn around your season. 119-117. Phoenix wins outright as a 3-point home dog in the Valley. They trailed by 23 points late in the third quarter. Kevin Durant, 34 points. Colin Gillespie, a big output off the bench with 12. Part of the reason Phoenix had that comeback.
Yeah, it is crazy, too, because it's a team that's just hanging on by a thread right now and getting punished all the way through that game until the fourth quarter, where they had a 43-22 advantage, enough to win by 2 points. But come on, Clippers, you're going to waste an Ivica Zubac performance of 37 minutes, 15 of 19 from the floor, and 35 points. You couldn't get that job done here. I don't know what is going on with the Clippers right now dropping to 32-29, one of those promising teams where everybody seemed healthy and ready to go. Now, not really the case. And I think they're on a back-to-back once again tonight, which multiple starters will probably sit. So I don't think it gets even any better at this point moving forward.
The Clippers only have one win in 7 games since the All-Star break. They have not covered in any of those 7 since the All-Star break. A big reason why? Norman Powell, injured for the first couple of games after the break, now dealing with a hamstring injury as well. When our guy is not out there, it is not a recipe for success for LA. Bradley Beal, 15 minutes, 0 points. Put Colin Gillespie, bud, into that starting 5, and maybe you will see some importance. Phoenix still 4 games below 500, still 3 out of a play-in tournament spot. But with the Kyrie Irving injury news, torn ACL out for the remainder of the year, and some injury uncertainty around Anthony Davis, could Phoenix make a charge to get into the play-in tournament? We shall see. Also, Donnie, just to say, the Lakers have the longest active win streak out west, 7 straight wins. The Cleveland Cavaliers, 11 consecutive victories for the NBA's best team, blowing out the Bulls in Chicago, 139-117, covering as a 13-point road favorite. College basketball scores next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Possible that while every other state is trying to copy New York and get that 51% tax on sports betting, is it possible that New York will actually lower their taxes? That's surprising.
The question is, of course, well, what sports books could go there? I mean, we're already at 9 that are the biggest ones out there in the market. So, I mean, who are you really missing?
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
The madness does not wait until the NCAA tournament. It happens all year long in college basketball, even early in March, even in the final week of the regular season at the high major level. That includes an upset of the number 1 team in the nation last night in College Station. Number 1 Auburn goes down, losing by double digits, 83-72. A&M snaps Auburn's 6-game win streak. A&M snaps their own 4-game slide, 83-72. The Aggies win outright as a 4.5-point home dog. A total of 151.5 does Sky over. No court storm. As Buzz Williams told them to stay off the court, maybe they have higher expectation. I still think you beat the number one team in the country. Let the kids have fun. But regardless, DRS, a huge win for Texas A&M to start to turn around some of that momentum early here in the month of March.
Yeah, I thought they had a decent matchup on paper, as I pointed out, though, just not playing as well as they were playing previously in the season. But Auburn, look, it's hard to win on the road. That's always the case in point we bring up. And unless you bring your A game, sometimes it doesn't work out. But however, you get to some of the box score statistics here from that Tigers-Aggies game and say, wait a second. Auburn went on the road and shot 50% from the floor to 43% for the Texas A&M Aggies. You take a look at the three-point line. They shot 41% from the three-point line to 36% for Texas A&M. Free throw line, 86% to 72%. But some of those numbers you have to look at and say, okay, one team made 18 free throws, the other 13, but still almost getting beat by double digits despite having the statistical advantage in just about every category is just an anomaly. But what did you expect, though? This conference is murderer's row on a night-to-night basis, and Auburn is still 15-2 there despite taking that loss. And it wasn't as Texas A&M was, hey, middling 500 team. That's a good basketball team in the top 25. It's no shame to get beat in that game because, again, unless you bring your A game every night in the SEC, which typically Auburn does, eventually you're going to get knocked off, and it's okay.
Over in 4 straight for Texas A&M, over in 9 of the last 11 for the Tigers. If there is any hole that you can poke in Auburn, they are not as elite defensively as teams like Duke and Houston, but of course the most efficient offense in all of college basketball. The Tigers were trying to be perfect on the road in SEC play. 9-0 in their final road game of the season. They come up 1 win shy. And again, for A&M, who had won 5 straight prior to this 4-game skid, a big victory as an underdog to snap that slide. Let's head out to the Big 12. Another top 25 tilt inside Hilton Coliseum in Ames, Iowa. 10th-ranked Iowa State, now fully healthy at home against a streaking BYU team, number 23 in the country. Low scoring to start, but then it got very exciting at the end of regulation, forcing in overtime, and not just 1 OT, but 2, as BYU prevails on the road, winning their 7th straight game, knocking off the Clones in Hilton. That is no easy order. 88-85, BYU wins outright as a 9.5-point road underdog.
It's a fun team. Why? Because they love to shoot the three-point shot. Did they do it ultra effectively yesterday? No, but you're playing a very good defensive team on the road and still come away at volume with 11 triples made. That's going to work out in your favor. And also, we talk about so many times, get to the charity stripe and make your free throws. Both of these teams did. 80% on one side, 87% on the other. Imagine shooting 31 free throws and making 87% of those at home, and you still couldn't come away with a victory. And also, just that anomaly. 29 turnovers by BYU on the road against a top 10 team and still won in double overtime. That's amazing. The Cougars are a hard team to match up with because they love the three-point shot, but also live by the 3, die by the 3. I don't know if you can trust that type of team once you get into March Madness because the reigning 3s, that's the ultimate equalizer. But if you're not hitting your three-point shots, BYU will go quietly into the night.
It was not a great offensive night for Iowa State. 39% from the floor, 28% from deep. Not what you are hoping for. Keyshawn Gilbert back for a second consecutive game. 13 points, 8 steals, but just 1 of 5 from 3. I am telling you, if BYU does make a run in the big dance, the Richie Saunders jerseys are going to go triple platinum in Provo. He had 23 points last night, 6 consecutive games, scoring at least 13 for Kevin Young, who has had a great first year in Provo. And, of course, very green pastures ahead, it would seem, for the Cougs. Plenty of other scores from around college basketball. Memphis wins on the road in San Antonio, but not much has come easy for the Tigers in AAC play. They win by 5 as an 8.5-point favorite, but do clinch a share of the American regular season crown. First conference title for Memphis in more than a decade, since 2012 in CUSA action. Plenty more around college basketball when Hour 2 starts next.